4 astronauts will climb aboard the most powerful rocket humanity has ever built, a machine forged from decades of ambition, politics, failure, and persistence. The engines will ignite with a force that shakes the ground and echoes across oceans, lifting them slowly at first, then violently into the sky. It is a mission that has consumed more than $90 billion, a mission described as historic, as essential, as the next great leap for mankind. And yet, when those astronauts reach the moon, after traveling farther than any human has in over half a century, they will not land. They will look down at its surface, trace the shadows of its craters, and then turn back toward Earth. At first glance, it feels almost contradictory, even wasteful. Why go all that way only to come back? Why build such an enormous machine, invest so much time, money, and energy, and stop just short of the goal humanity once achieved over 50 years ago? NASA calls it progress. Critics call it hesitation. But the truth is far more complicated, woven through layers of history, engineering, politics, and risk in a way that defies simple answers. To understand why this mission, Artemis II, won't land on the moon, you have to go back to a time when landing there seemed almost routine. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Apollo program accomplished what had once been unimaginable. Humans walked on the lunar surface, collected samples, and returned safely to Earth. But Apollo didn't end because the mission was complete. It ended because the world that made it possible changed. The Vietnam War drained resources, public interest faded after the first landing, and NASA's budget began to shrink. Missions that were already planned, already funded, were cancelled. The momentum that carried humanity to the moon simply dissipated. What followed was not a continuation, but a shift. The space shuttle focused on low Earth orbit. The International Space Station became a permanent outpost, but one that circled only a few hundred kilometers above the planet. The moon remained distant, not just physically, but programmatically. Attempts to return, like the Constellation program, were started and abandoned, leaving behind fragments of progress and a growing sense that reaching the moon again might not be as simple as repeating history. When Artemis was announced, it carried the weight of all those unfinished ambitions. It promised not just a return, but a new beginning, one that would place humans on the moon again and eventually push beyond toward Mars. At the center of this vision is the Space Launch System, a rocket so large and powerful that it redefines the scale of human spaceflight. Sitting atop it is the Orion spacecraft, designed to carry astronauts farther than any spacecraft since Apollo. Together, they represent the culmination of decades of technological evolution. The first test, Artemis I, proved that the system could reach the moon and return. It traveled farther than expected, orbited in deep space, and survived the brutal heat of re-entry. But even in success, there were signs of complexity. The heat shield, one of the most critical components, didn't behave exactly as predicted. Subtle anomalies appeared, forcing engineers to pause, analyze, and reconsider. In spaceflight, small uncertainties can become catastrophic risks, and nothing is taken lightly when human lives are involved. So Artemis II becomes something very specific. It is not a mission of conquest, but of validation. It is designed to answer a question that is both simple and profound. Can humans safely travel to the moon and back using this new system? Every moment of the mission is an experiment, every system under scrutiny. Life support, navigation, communication, radiation exposure, everything must be tested in the real environment of deep space before the next step can even be considered. And that next step, the actual landing, is far more complicated than most people realize. Traveling to the moon is one challenge. Landing on it is another entirely. It requires a separate spacecraft, known as the Human Landing System, which will carry astronauts from lunar orbit down to the surface and back again. Unlike Apollo, where everything was developed under a single unified program, Artemis relies on a combination of government and private systems. NASA builds the rocket and the crew capsule, but the lander is being developed by a private company, still in the process of testing and refinement. This introduces a level of complexity that didn't exist before. The systems must not only work individually, but together, seamlessly, under conditions where failure is not an option. And as of now, that integration is not ready. The lander itself represents one of the most ambitious engineering challenges ever attempted, requiring technologies that have never been demonstrated at the necessary scale. Refueling in orbit, managing cryogenic fuels and microgravity, coordinating multiple launches, these are not incremental steps forward. They are leaps into the unknown. Even the destination has changed. Artemis is not aiming for the same relatively safe and familiar regions explored during Apollo. It is targeting the lunar South Pole, a place of extreme conditions and enormous potential. There, in permanently shadowed craters, lies water ice, one of the most valuable resources in space. It can be used for life support, for fuel, for sustaining a long-term human presence. But reaching it requires landing in one of the most challenging environments imaginable, where sunlight barely touches the surface and temperatures plunge to unimaginable lows. Artemis II will not test any of this. It cannot. Its trajectory is designed for safety, following a path that ensures the crew can return to Earth even if critical systems fail. It is a deliberate choice, a recognition that before pushing the boundaries further, the fundamentals must be proven beyond doubt. Yet the reasons go beyond engineering. They extend into the realm of politics and economics, where decisions are shaped not only by what is possible, but by what is sustainable. The Space Launch System itself is a product of compromise, built using existing technologies and infrastructure to preserve jobs and maintain continuity. It is powerful, but expensive, so expensive that every launch must justify itself. There is no room for unnecessary risk, no tolerance for missions that fail to deliver meaningful results. At the same time, the program exists within a shifting global landscape. Other nations are advancing their own lunar ambitions, turning what was once a solitary pursuit into a competitive arena. The urgency to move forward is real, but so is the need to proceed carefully. History has shown what happens when that balance is lost, when pressure overrides caution. The lessons of past tragedies still echo through every decision. And then there is the human element, perhaps the most compelling aspect of all. The astronauts who will fly on Artemis II are not just participants in a mission. They are part of a moment that bridges generations. They will see the moon as few have seen it, close enough to feel its presence, distant enough to remain just out of reach. They will carry with them the hopes of a program that is still finding its path, still defining what it means to return. Their journey will be short in duration, but immense in significance. Every measurement, every observation, every piece of data they bring back will shape the missions that follow. Artemis III, the one that aims to land, will depend on what Artemis II reveals. In that sense, this mission is not incomplete, it is foundational. What emerges from all of this is a realization that space exploration has changed. It is no longer a straight line from launch to landing, no longer a race defined by a single goal. It is a complex system of interdependent parts, each requiring time, testing, and refinement. Artemis II sits at the center of this system, not as a final achievement, but as a necessary step in a much longer journey. The moon is still there, unchanged, waiting. It does not demand speed or urgency. It does not measure progress in budgets or deadlines. It simply exists, a destination that humanity continues to reach for, one mission at a time. Artemis II will not land because the path to landing is still being built, piece by piece, challenge by challenge. And perhaps that is the most important truth of all. Exploration has never been about taking the fastest route. It has always been about taking the right one, even when it means stopping just short of the goal. Because sometimes the step before the leap is the one that determines whether the leap succeeds. As this mission approaches, the question remains open, not just about Artemis, but about the future of human spaceflight itself. Will this careful, methodical approach lead to a sustainable presence on the moon? Will the collaboration between governments and private companies redefine what is possible? Or will shifting priorities and uncertain funding reshape the path once again? What do you think? Should humanity push faster toward the moon, or is this slower, more cautious approach the only way forward? And when the moment finally comes, will it feel like a return, or the beginning of something entirely new?